Honorable Excellencies, dear fellow ministers, I'm going to make it in English, as I always did. While another year is coming to an end, and we are here to celebrate the arrival of 2022 and renew our commitment to international friendship. I'm proud of many things this country represents and of many things we have accomplished so far, especially in the very tough last 2 years when, with your help, we fought back after a devastating earthquake and we didn't regress on what we had to achieve while facing a globally challenging pandemic. Let me say that despite the ongoing difficulties that we face as a country, but also beyond, I'm confident that more will be done in the year to come. The coming year is a crucial one for Albania, as it prepares to occupy in January its seat as a non-permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations, an institution that better than anyone embodies the spirit of both cooperation and responsibility that defines your daily work. It is a historic opportunity for Albania, a country still scarred by decades of isolation and paranoia, of hostility to other nations, of entrenchment in its own ways and delusion about the motives of others. That we are now able to join the Security Council with other countries that we no longer see as enemies to fight, but as allies with whom to build a better world, shows just how far we have traveled. But this historic opportunity also presents itself at a time of a great challenge, not just for my country, but also for all of yours. Not just for Albania, but for the Balkans. Not just for the Balkans, but for Europe. Not just for Europe, but for the world. These are demanding times for all of us, and the challenges we face sometimes seem greater than what we can cope with. Greater is also the need we have for each other, large and small, developed or developing countries, Westerners or Easterners, Northerners or Southerners. As we navigate one crisis only to find ourselves in another, in what seems to have become a permanent state of emergency, it is essential that we do not let that state of emergency take hold of our minds. It is vital that we do not retreat to isolation, suspicion of what is different from us, the fear of what we cannot control. Albania knows all too well what the cost of that isolation is. We have no lessons for the world but one, the one we have learned in the hardest way. No country can manage this alone. The new challenges we face are increasingly unpredictable. They do not lend themselves to the adaptation of solutions that have already been tried and tested in the past, to large nations imparting lessons to smaller ones. We are all new to the challenges. We are all in this together, and we can learn from each other's successes and failures. An injury suffered in the most remote corner of the planet is a potential fatal blow to its core. Its effects, as we have learned with the pandemic, are immediate, everywhere. The consequences are lasting. The enemies we confront are increasingly invisible. Health emergencies, climate change, the anonymous power of disinformation, fueled by the development of new technologies. But as we all confront those invisible enemies, we must not become invisible to each other. We must revisit not just the basis of the social contract between governments and their citizens, but also that which binds different governments to each other, to make sure that we don't sacrifice rights, but expand them, and that we don't diminish our commitment to values, but show that we really practice what we preach. Governing a small country is hardly easier than governing a large one. Serving a large country has often been easier than serving a small one, as you ambassadors know better than anyone else. But in the world in which we live, leading large countries means increasingly leading not just large countries, but humanity as a whole. As we navigate together these challenges of the future, it is essential that large countries also adopt an enlarged point of view, the point of view of humanity as a whole. Faced with large-scale global challenges, we are all frighteningly very small. But it is crucial that large countries do not become small in their hearts and in their minds, smaller in their attitudes to other countries, in their ability to tolerate difference, in the resources they need to find to cope with the unpredictable. An infamous Albanian once said at the end of his New Year's greeting, "This year has been harder than the last. On the other hand, it has been easier than the next to come." Some may find that a plausible depiction of the current state of the world. I'm not going to tell you who that Albanian is, but I can give you a clue by telling you that he was a master of isolation, of manipulating fear and paranoia to cope with seemingly permanent emergencies. We must never let our reflection on the future become a hostage of that mentality. It's not about easier or harder years. It's about responsible and irresponsible governance. How large and small countries shape those responsibilities in the future, how they act or fail to act together on the face of uncertainty, will determine how their legacy among future generations, not of this or that specific country, but future generations of humans, if humanity is able to rise to the challenges. What we do know and how we relate to each other will determine whether next year and the years to come will be easier or harder, better or worse. Our actions now decide what happens not just to my country, but also to all of yours, to all of us together as citizens of the different nations you all here represent, but most importantly, as citizens of the world that we have a responsibility to improve. We are here to celebrate, and my wish for the new year is that just as we celebrate here, simply as human beings, we'll also cooperate further, simply as human beings. Winning a record third mandate did not make me feel unbeatable, but more humbled than ever towards the people of Albania, who lent me and my party their trust while expecting more. Let me confess here personally, victory was bittersweet. I felt we had not done enough to heal divisions in a country still haunted by the past, where the messenger had to be killed before the message could be heard, and where a political opponent is still seen not as an adversary to engage, but as an enemy to destroy. After such a victory, I'm haunted more than ever by the powerlessness of power in making fast progress to modernize a country that wasted so many decades through dictatorship and then anarchy, absolute poverty and then corruption, one-party rule and then bad governance. When I contemplate the infernal speed of time in office vis-à-vis the humanly possible speed of change in the country, I feel uneasy. I know that the pace of change can never be fast enough to match the whirlwind of decades of aspirations grown from frustrated desires. Take the EU. We did whatever it took, again and again, to get the green light to the next step, and again we were let down by forces beyond our control. It is a fact of life, and while we will continue to do whatever it takes to make Albania every year a more credible, more functioning, more EU-like democratic state, time flies, and the frustration among Albanians grows. Take justice reform. We did whatever it took to start the reform of judicial after 25 years of failure. We did it with unwavering commitment, while taking all the political risks in a hostile and sometimes dangerous environment, facing opposition even within our own former coalition. We promised people that the new justice system that brings fairness to all is finally on its way, and I still firmly believe that it is. But it takes time, much more time than the time that mercilessly flies while results come just too slowly for the people of this country that have waited endlessly to live in a place where everyone is equal before the law. It takes patience, much more than this nation has left, while the usual suspects of the past have the guts to still make grotesque threats with pitchforks or comebacks in the name of sovereignty, dignity, purity. Take the fight against corruption. It takes political will. And yes, we have it. It takes reforms all over the board. And yes, we've embarked in all of them. It takes modernization, of course. And yes, we are working incessantly for it. Nevertheless, it takes, first and foremost, an independent and fully functioning justice system. While all we can do so far, while we wait for its benefits to materialize, is to take advantage of digitalization and new technologies that can help developing countries leap from one era to another just in a few years. But it can hardly be enough to relieve people from their growing impatience and frustration, despite the indisputable changes that we continue to make. Take the further upgrades of healthcare, education, public administration too. We did more in 8 years than decades. But how can it be enough while the world we live in is so interconnected and Albanians are so intertwined with the world that the government is bound to be compared with the neighboring European Union, where healthcare, education systems, public administration have been built long before in Albania there was a state. Take inequality and social justice. We did a lot, but still a far more lot remains to be done. And I won't go on. I did not mean to present you with a litany of complaints, nor with an outcry for sympathy with my reflections on the search for lost time. But it is the end of another year after all, so if not now, when? Having to lead the country for a third unprecedented mandate is an honor and a privilege that I am the first Albanian to have. To be this means something so important and so obliging toward the people of this country that I cannot find the words to express, and I am committed to give it all of myself to pay it back as much as it is humanly possible. In the coming days, I'll launch a new initiative of the government to open a new page of interaction between us, the government, and the people, independently from their political affiliation. These are very challenging times, and we have to act all together like citizens of Albania, like fathers, mothers, and children, like brothers and sisters, like people that want to give their best to their country, like humans that want the best for such a beautiful portion of earth that we are blessed to call home. The future we all want cannot be built just with our convictions and the freedom to express them, but also through our will to listen more to each other and work more closely together, despite our differences. If it seems too much easier said than done, when it comes to party politics, it should not be as difficult when it comes to the involvement of ordinary people in the common decisions we have to make. And who knows, in the run, it might help with decisions between political parties too. So, let me conclude by wishing that the new year will be for Albanians the year of listening to each other as humans, of relating to each other as people with a limited time on earth, as beings whose life goes too quickly to waste it in destroying each other as enemies, as opposed to building together a shared future for their children. Thank you.